Composing made simple. We talk about something new every show. Composing made simple. Grab a coffee, have a seat, and let's go.
Welcome to the second episode of Composing Made Simple podcast. I am joined by Curtis and Chris, and today we are going to discuss on the podcast advice for new composers, how to share your music, how to find clients, how to find work. Also, we're going to talk about getting started sample libraries, things when you're a new composer just getting started, which libraries you should go for. So I'm throwing it over to Curtis to get us started.
So when you're first starting out, it's always hard to sort of get your work out there, get it in front of people, which is something you always have to do because no one's going to hire you if they haven't heard what you did. So we kind of wanted to start out, first of all, how do you get noticed? How do you get your music out on the internet? How do you start getting feedback? This is something I have a lot of people ask me, and I think between the three of us, we've got some pretty good ideas about what is a great way to do this. So let's start with some platforms. I mean, what platforms does everybody use for sort of demos, reels, things like that? Things that like allow you to show other people your music.
Well, I'll start. I personally use YouTube as the primary source of where I upload my music. SoundCloud's also a good option, but there's been some debate over the sound quality of SoundCloud and how they compress the music. But Facebook is also another place where I'm quite active on and share my music on there as well. So Facebook and YouTube are kind of my two primary platforms, and SoundCloud is kind of like a placeholder for people who only want the audio versions.
Yeah, I'm pretty much similar to you, Chris. I put my music up on YouTube. I find YouTube's like more of the marketing, kind of get my name out there to find people and find fans. It also helps to do tutorial videos, not just music, kind of help people, and that kind of lures them in, and they might listen to your music, they might not. Most people don't, but it's always good to build up a fan base in your brand. I don't use Facebook too much because it's kind of I have a personal page, and I kind of tend to I tried it in the past, and I didn't really get any great responses, but I guess that's because I'm not very active on Facebook. I kind of left Facebook. I've been on it since 2005, so it's kind of old for me. I do have SoundCloud. And, it's like Chris said, it's cool, but I don't see too much on it. I guess I find fans and people will subscribe to it once in a while or leave a comment, but I don't see a lot of traction, mostly YouTube. And also I put my music up on my website. I think that's the best place to do it because that's like your calling card. And it's good if you can host your own music on your website instead of using services like SoundCloud like that, because if the service ever goes away, there goes your music. So I think that's just my little tip for you. Make sure you have your music on your own webpage that you own. That will always help you out. Yeah,
it's great because a lot of website builders, actually I think all of them have an option where you can embed your own links and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I think Todd's really on the mark there, that like having at least somewhere where you control where your music is and how it's presented is important, because I had a really unique experience with SoundCloud in that, I was just starting out, I was working on Starbound stuff, and we sort of had all these demo tracks, and I was just using SoundCloud to sort of share these with the developer because the developer could just go to a page, hit play and listen. And this was really great, except for that I didn't pay for SoundCloud. So all these were kind of just sitting there waiting for people to find them out. They didn't say Starbound on them. They didn't say anything on them. Somehow the community found it. Okay. And so, we had a bit of a fiasco in terms of just like it was locked down. Anybody could go listen to it. And so people just went to SoundCloud. So I had this like huge, and Starbound had this like weird, huge, I don't want to say weird. They're actually really lovely. This really, big set of people following it. And so I suddenly had, millions of plays on SoundCloud. I suddenly had tons of followers, thousands of followers on SoundCloud. So I've used SoundCloud pretty extensively just because of that leverage that I sort of got out of that happy little accident. Yeah. But I agree with Chris's notion that that SoundCloud does kind of mangle your stuff. I usually will upload to SoundCloud in the final deliverable format of a 24, 48 kilohertz WAV file. And when I listen to it on SoundCloud, I can tell that they've taken that beautiful uncompressed audio and they've taken it down to like a 128 kilobit MP3 file, and there's all sorts of artifacting and all sorts of stuff on there. So, and it's important to note that that's even true. I mean, I paid for SoundCloud Premium for a long time. it still does it. So there's not really a great way. So SoundCloud is good in that it's easy and that there's a lot of people there. So if you're on SoundCloud and that's the way you're doing it now, I would encourage you to continue and kind of use that momentum that you've already built up there. But if you're just starting out, I would consider some other options, because I do agree they kind of mangle your sound and they don't give you a lot of flexibility. And that's where your own website is really great, because typically on your own website you have some control as to how it's presented. You can put a higher quality MP3 file up in your player, say, or on YouTube even, actually, an HD YouTube video is essentially playing almost uncompressed audio, which is really high quality. So that's a good place to put it too. So
yeah.
And just a side note, I've noticed that most of the people who hang out on SoundCloud are like hip hop producers, pop producers, those kind of people with the more mainstream styles, because it just seems like their audio isn't affected quite as badly as something with more dynamics and a little more detail.
Yeah, typically like producers, EDM guys, and you find out what works best for you. That's what we always like Curtis said, he had a lot of success, with Starbound, because that was a very popular game, but not always, not all of us are going to get that. So find what works best for you and try to test it. You have to test over and over to find out what's working. Make sure you're studying your analytics and how many plays and stuff like that, and find out where you need to put your time and focus. At first, kind of spread it out, get the feel of it. Try YouTube, try SoundCloud, try Facebook, try Twitter, try Twitch if you want to live stream. That's a really great place to find fans, because they actually get to see you. If you want to create the tracks, show behind the scenes live, you're doing them. That's a really good way to build a following and a fan base. I know I do some live streaming. Curtis does some live streaming. And, you always got to keep in mind that, it's going to be kind of lonely at first. I mean, one day you might get 5 people that come in and start talking with you. And if they do, try to talk to them personally and build the relationship. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is, build a relationship with your fans. That's very crucial today. With that all being said, so how should you share your music? That's very important. And I know from my personal experience, when I'm on Facebook or, going around, I see what you shouldn't do. Hi, look at me. This is my new track I made. Hi. And then just, put it on everybody's post. Most people aren't going to listen to your music. You might get a few people that will. So it goes back to, for my advice and what I've been always told and what I see what works is you got to build a relationship. If you're making YouTube videos, don't just post your music. I mean, you can post your music there, but try to find another way to connect with people. Maybe do a vlog or, post tutorials so they can get to find out who you are as a person, because that's the world we live in. When I was growing up, we didn't know bands. We only knew the bands if you were in, like, I was into Metallica and stuff like that. So, I had to get a Guitar Player magazine or, Rolling Stone to find out of an interview. And that was it. But that's not the world we live in today. Everybody's life is online with Twitter and stuff like that. And don't just get a Twitter account and just start posting your link. It's going to go out into the ether and, no one's going to ever see it ever again. Unless you find some success like Curtis did, and then once you get a fan base, a following, then that's time to share your links. But I think right now, the best way to share your music is go on forums that people have similar taste in or the music that you create, and try to build relationships with them, talk with them, try to solve some of their problems. And then when you feel it's right, then throw them. Hey, by the way, will you check out my music, or what do you think of my track? Or, try to find some forums, or you can go over to the Composing Made Simple Discord channel. We have a track feedback section. You can post your links there, and that's a good way to get some people, and they'll give you some honest feedback. So that's just some of my things. What do you guys feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think where you're really right there is that you are asking people to give you value. You're asking them to give you feedback on your piece. Maybe you're asking them to hire you to literally give you money to make a music for them. You want something out of them. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with wanting those things. But you have to understand that you need to help give other people value too. So that means if you're going to go on a forum like VI Control or Composing Made Simple or anywhere, and you're wanting people to spend time listening to your music and writing out their thoughts, you should also be there participating in the community, giving them some value. And you're probably going to have to give them a lot more value than you're going to get out at first. Mm-hmm. So it takes a long time to sort of work that up. And this is work. On our little list of stuff to talk about. Our next thing is how to find clients, and this really segues really well here in that your relationships and what you have done for people are what's going to help you get there. We all want to believe that it's like a total meritocracy and that some filmmaker is going to get on some website and listen to 40,000 different clips and pick the one he genuinely or she genuinely thinks is the best. Mm-hmm. They don't have time. They don't have time. They're going to pick the person who has given them some value, who has helped them in some way. And that's really going to help. Who was I on with? I think I was on with somebody on Composing Made Simple on the Discord the other day who was talking about he works for Sony or Sony licensing.
I remember
He was talking about how a single business lunch, just buying somebody lunch goes a long, long, long way because you showed that you're willing to give them help with what they're doing, because everybody's struggling, everybody's trying to do this thing. I mean, think about if you were trying to hire a musician, if you had a million violin players coming at you saying, I really, 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 I want you to hire me for this score and blah, blah, blah. You're probably going to pick the ones that you've had existing relationships with you, who you can depend on and who have helped you in the past. That's just human nature. It's just the way that it works. And we would all love for it to be just this, like I said, a pure meritocracy where everything is exactly even and everyone competes perfectly. But that's just not the case. There's too many people. Right. You are competing against too many people to expect a filmmaker or a game developer or anything, any kind of client, to just sort of pick you out of a heap without knowing you. You have to build those relationships, and that means going onto those communities and being active on those communities and giving as much value as you can.
Right. And it's not who you know, it's how you know them. And people hire their friends. That's just the nature of the business. You could be the best composer in the world and still not have a job. I mean, people do not hire on the best people, because you got to remember, most people that aren't composers or musicians, they don't understand music like we do. So they just go, hey, that sounds good to me. I want to get it. And it could be to us as, composers go, yeah, that's a really crappy track. There's really nothing going on there. They don't care. They're going to hire that person because they know them, they trust them, they've worked with them before, and they know that they can deliver the work on time.
Exactly.
So it's how you know somebody. That's how you get jobs. And it's really tough to say. It's not like, look at me, I have 7,000 followers, I'm going to get work. Nope. Like some guy with 2 followers might get more work because he put the time in with that client and built a relationship over time. And then when the day comes, he goes, man, I need a composer for this video game. Oh, I remember Curtis. I was talking to him on the forum. He does music. I really like Curtis. He has a lot of good stuff to say about me. And, I like him. I like the guy. So I'm going to hire him. And that's how it works.
Yeah, no, I was going to basically summarize what Curtis was saying. And as someone who, I don't want to say advertises, but I like to share a lot of what I do on Facebook. So I usually have 2 mindsets when I'm posting something. One, it has to provide value in some way. And number 2, you have to be open to getting feedback from other people. So for example, I just posted a video yesterday about discussing Charlie Puth's kind of musical style and what I thought about the new album. And on my personal page, I was saying, take a look at this if you want to see what I think makes his music really unique. But in another page for pop music, I was kind of saying, not only this, but you should also see how his style might work for you and your music. So I think that as the very last sentence, saying, if you watch this might help you write something similar, or have something in a similar genre as Puth. And then people seem to like that, and they got engagement on it pretty quickly. So just those 2 mindsets of being able to give value to other people, no matter what it is, like a tutorial or even feedback to other people. Those are kind of the main things that I find work the best when sharing content personally.
Yeah.
Right. Giving good feedback is a skill. You have to practice it, just like any other thing, like an instrument or whatever. You have to practice it. And so going on and talking to somebody about the thing they did. So, if you want someone to give you feedback, you should probably be giving them feedback too. You should probably be giving them 2 pieces of feedback for every feedback you get from them. Mm-hmm. Just to let them know. And just that shows a willingness to contribute. So, and
and if you're looking for how to deliver good feedback, definitely join the Composing Made Simple, the Discord channel, and take a look at some of what Curtis says, because he actually goes in detail of like every single thing the composer does, and provides them tips on that. So, because if you say something like, "Oh, great work," then you might not have listened to it even at all, right? You're just saying that just to show that, I'm interested, but I didn't really take the time to provide detailed feedback of what you could do better or even what you did really well.
Yeah, I host every month. I do a track feedback for all my YouTube subscribers, and let me tell you, that's been really it's helped a lot, because not only am I giving feedback on the spot live, I get their tracks. I don't listen to them before I get them. I listen to them once, and that's my first time ever listening to their track. So I have that objectivity about it, and it really forces me to think about it, because sometimes it's really hard to give track feedback. I mean, it really is, because you have to think about a lot of elements, and it's going by really quickly, and you're absorbing it first take. So what I do is I listen to the track once through, and then I go back to it and I try to find points where they can make it better, or hey, you should do this and do that. I don't really get into the theory and like, oh, you should have used this chord, because that's subjective. That's up to the composer. If that's what he wanted to use, fine. As long as if it works. If it doesn't work, it's hey, that doesn't sound right. That try something else there. I try not to get too technical. I try to listen to it with I guess you want to say pop ears, like if this was going to be on the radio, or is anybody going to listen to this track? Are they going to like this track? But, music is so subjective, and it's really hard. I mean, it could be the greatest track in the world, but there's going to be somebody out there that hates it. I mean, that's just the way the world works. But yeah, so I'm just echoing everything that Chris and Curtis says. Yeah, if you want to really stand out and provide value, go to somebody's SoundCloud, YouTube, and find a song, listen to it, and then tell them your opinions. But make sure it's positive. Don't be, make sure you be critical, but make sure it's going to help them in the long run. Just say, hey, your track sucks, dude. Whatever that horn sound or sampler you're using, it sucks. Yeah, don't use that. No, tell them, hey, I like what you did there. Maybe try a little more expression. Maybe try a different brass patch, or maybe try layering it. See, that's adding value. You're helping them. And at the end of the day, when you help somebody, they're going to want to help you too. So, and especially if you want to be a film scorer, try to learn more about being a filmmaker, how to tell a story, how to direct, how to pick lenses. If you just know basic stuff and then go on there, hey, I was this and that, think about how much more value you'd bring to a film guy. Like this composer guy is telling me stuff, and it's actually making sense. That might help you in the long run. Just stuff like that. You just got to find creative ways to help people.
And this all is part of finding clients. I mean, this is all, people always ask, how do you find clients? Well, you participate. You have to show up. I mean,
patience.
No one wants to say that it's luck, but it is.
It is.
And so you want to play that slot machine as many times as you can. Mm-hmm. If you go to Vegas with a quarter and you expect to come out with the jackpot, you are going to be a sad person. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. You have to bring all your stuff and you have to play that slot machine over and 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 over. And this is, again, goes back to composing every day that I always talk about. You have to play the slot machine, because 99 times out of 100, you're going to play the slot machine and you're going to go bust. So, but you're looking for that one time where you make that one relationship, and it may pay off in a year or 10 years or next week or tomorrow. You have no idea.
Yep.
But you just have to keep playing that slot machine, because those are the people that usually end up succeeding. And it's not always the people who make the nicest music. Again, we'd all love for that to be true, that only the genius people get all the great jobs and get paid all the money, and it's totally based on how good you are at music. You are competing with the producer's 17-year-old cousin with his Casio keyboard in his basement, and you might lose to him if he plays a slot machine more than you. So,
and patience. And then, finding clients, it's a long game, and it's building relationships, because you don't know that one person you talked to last month might know somebody that's looking for a composer. Bam, you just got a job. And then it snowballs from there. You just never know where your jobs are going to come from.
Yeah, it's just like, it's all relationships, because you don't know that second AD on that film who was sending you, maybe feedback that annoyed you, right, on your film score or whatever, might be the real director director of another film, and if you respond to him well, and you provide value to him, he might remember you. So it's all relationships. That's really hard. I'm a very introverted person. I know I'm sitting here on a podcast, and it seems kind of like how can this person be introverted? I am pretty introverted. I don't love to be around large groups of people, and so that is really, really hard for me to care about the relationships. But if you don't, it's just the way the world works.
It's a skill. You can learn how to talk to people, even if you are, introverted. I'm very introverted. I hate big crowds. I hate talking to people. But, I've learned through the years of being a professional, working corporate, if you want to move up or if you want to, be seen in a good light, you got to play the game. That's what someone told me one time. You got to play the game. You just got to show up and play. And also, I know we talked about how to get clients. Where should you look to find clients? That's a big thing. I think for me personally, I found a couple, non-paying jobs, but at the time I was just getting started wanting to build a reel, so it made sense to me. I started locally. I found local filmmaking groups on Facebook. And I just said, hey, I'm a composer looking to get started. If anybody has anything or needs any help, let me know. And then, a couple of people ranged out. You'd be surprised. Special local indie guys, they're desperate most of the time. So don't expect to get paid a lot of money. But if you're just getting started, I think it's beautiful. And there you go. You just don't know where those relationships are going to end up, because you got to think about it. They're just getting started too. You don't know where their career is headed off to. You don't know who they know. Because I worked with a guy that he actually used to work in Hollywood, and he was connected pretty good. So yeah, you just never know where your next job's going to go. So I would say if you're just getting started in this and you're trying to find clients, start local. Start with people look for local Facebook groups. I think that's your best place to start.
Yeah, personally for me, all of my clients have been through Facebook, and sharing music in a good way that's not pretentious or self-righteous. And I was going to say, I think if you find yourself introverted, like I definitely am, try to see if there's a hobby for you that puts yourself in front of other people. Because for me personally, I was into magic tricks and card tricks for a long time, and it forced me to go in front of my friends and actually people I didn't know as well, and think on the spot. And when you're in front of other people, it makes your heart go, it makes your heart race, and those are all pressure situations, right? So when you're outside of that in everyday normal life talking with people, you'll definitely start to find it easier. And that will help you make those connections as well. So putting yourself in situations that might not always be the case, like performing in front of, 100 people or whatever, those can kind of toughen you up a little bit. So like Curtis and Todd said, there's really no excuse for not going out and trying to reach out to people nowadays.
Yeah. And the internet makes it easy to talk to people, but at the end of the day, you're just a name or maybe a picture. They don't really get to know who you are, and that's why I suggest, when you're doing YouTube stuff, don't just put your music, put some stuff up there about you. Brand yourself. And if you're going to do some live streaming, that's another way to open up, because you have people watching you compose music, which is very difficult. Having an audience, but they get to see the real you, and then upload those to YouTube so they're there at all times. Then when someone's coming to search for you, maybe they found your track on SoundCloud, they put your name into Google. Hey, there they go. Oh my gosh, they do a YouTube channel, they do all this stuff. So now they're starting to put the picture, and they're starting to see who you are as a person. So that's one thing. That's how to do it online. But then, like we've been saying, you also have to do it in person, because at the end of the day, doing it in person and building that connection is going to get you the job.
Excellent. So I think that's some pretty good advice about clients. I think maybe now we can start talking about some of the more nitty-gritty technical stuff. I think the first thing we have on our list is PROs, performing rights organizations. So I'm based in the U.S., so I am a member of ASCAP. In the U.S., there's two major PROs. They're free to join. You don't have to do anything. They don't, own the rights to your music. Basically, the way that ASCAP or BMI works is as long as you've registered a work, which is just like, say, a cue you wrote for a film or a royalty-free track that you did. Hilariously, royalty-free tracks, often not as royalty-free as you would expect. They will watch, whenever somebody puts something on TV or on the radio or whatever medium ASCAP or BMI monitors, they're required legally to submit to the PROs, ASCAP and BMI in the United States. There's other ones. There's CSAC in Europe. There's ones, for specific countries. We can talk more about those in a second. But they're required to file what's called a cue sheet, which shows we played this piece by this person for this long. I come at it from the film side, so I think about it as cue sheets. I think there are other mechanisms by which they sort of receive those the lists of things they used. So when a PRO sees, for example, that movie X was on television, they look at the cue sheet for that movie and they see composer Todd wrote a cue and it was this long. And so they know exactly where it was broadcast and for how long. So they go and they collect a royalty for that broadcast, and they hold that royalty until it is time for them to do their quarterly payouts, at which time they take, a small cut, and then they'll send it off to the composer. And they're doing this for probably thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people every day. So that's how they work. And then depending on where you are, they work a little bit differently. The important and key things to know is that if you want to get that royalty for your music being broadcast, you need to be a member of a PRO. You need to have registered the work, the cue, the song, whatever, with the PRO, and you need you need to have, when they worked on it, there needs to have been some sort of record that was filed. I do believe that if, say, somebody puts a film on TV and they don't give them a cue sheet, they'll kind of go after them and kind of hound them about it, but I'm not 100% sure how that end of it works. So that's kind of just the basics of it. But basically, it's just something that sits between people who broadcast. So we're talking, television, film, whatever. They sit between people who broadcast and the composers and sort of collect on those composers or songwriters' behalfs.
Right, and this is how you get paid, right? This is how you get
and then at the end of the quarter, they pay out to whoever's stuff has been paid out. And depending on, where it gets broadcast, they will work with another PRO. For example, I did some work on, or I had some tracks that were licensed for some hilarious Discovery Channel, like When Vacations Attack, one of these reality shows, where, people, get into horrible hotspots in their vacations. And I had like a couple of tracks licensed. If that show is shown in, like, say, Russia, there is a Russian PRO that is the one who handles getting the cue sheet. And then they actually see that, oh, this is an ASCAP affiliated composer here. And then they work with ASCAP to sort of be the bridge between those two entities. So, at the end of the month, if anything or at the end of the quarter, if anything that I have worked on that happens to have been broadcast or gets used, I get a pretty detailed breakdown of where it was used and what royalty organizations collected on my behalf, and then a check for 15 cents or whatever.
A penny. I think actually I'm a member of BMI. I think I did this years ago. But like I said, I've never really done anything that way, so I haven't really pushed into it. But yeah, it's definitely something to, if you're just getting started, maybe just to go find that works for you, register it, because down the road you're actually going to utilize it if you start getting tracks,
Well, and you need to be careful about how you register it. I mean, if you're doing work for something where the contract or the agreement that you have disallows you from registering it with a PRO, you should be aware of that so that those people then don't have ASCAP coming after them with a handout for money, and they're like, but my agreement says I don't need it, all this stuff. So that's also something to be aware of. I would encourage you to, generally by default, if you can register works, to register them. I'm really bad. I don't have nearly as many works registered as I should, but register them, because that's, if you don't and that someone uses it, that's just money on the table that is not yours, because there are two sides of every collection. There's the publisher and there's those, I think ASCAP calls it songwriter, but it's basically the composer, the writer, the person who actually created it. And if they can't find, the writer, that publisher is just going to take the whole royalty. So, and typically if there's no publisher on record, the publisher becomes the company that broadcast.
Okay.
So then they just, basically pay themselves.
Yep. So it's very important to, look into ASCAP, BMI if you're in the U.S., and then the international CSAC, and was it SOCAN for Canada?
Yeah,
So whatever your country or wherever you live, just go there, search up PROs, and you should find which one is available in your country. And like Curtis said, definitely look into it, research what's best for you, and definitely register so you can get paid.
And they're all pretty much the same. I mean, I'm sure if you were talking to an ASCAP or BMI person, there's this great ASCAP BMI holy war amongst people in the United States.
We have this artist, and we have
right.
You hear that
they're
all the
pretty
time.
much the same.
Yeah. And then you said most of them are free, right? Or they're all free for the most part?
Yeah, I think they are. I don't recall ever paying anything to be an ASCAP. I signed up for ASCAP in like 2008. Something like that, 2009. I may have paid a small fee when I did that, but I certainly haven't paid any more, and I still get my 15-cent check. So, seems to be working.
Do you frame those on the wall? All right, so I guess money is a big thing, and I know we wanted to talk about rates. How do they work? What should you charge? I know a lot of guys out there, and what I see online, especially in Facebook groups, somebody says they have a gig. Hey, I'll do it for free here, and it's like, whoa, slow down. As a composer, as an artist, don't feel bad about asking for money. We need to get paid for our work. It's no different than if you were, building a car, or just think of anything that, you're going to charge somebody, or if you're building a house, a roof, a fence, you're going to want, to be paid for your labor. And music, for some reason, or the arts for some reason, has this stigma attached to it. Well, you shouldn't ask for money because it's art. Art is never, you should never make money with art. You are not an artist if you ask for money. That's bullshit. And, you need to be paid because you're working just as hard as everybody else. It's just a stigma, I think, especially here in the States, there's a stigma attached to it. I don't know about you, Chris. I know you're in Canada. I don't know if you guys have a similar stigma, but I know in the States we kind of have a stigma about, I'm an artist,
It's really hard because, when you're first starting out, you are competing with literally everyone. You are competing with people who have the same CV that you do that maybe has no films or games or any work on it at all. And you're also competing with Hans Zimmer, right? You really are. You not super directly, but you are. Because if Hans Zimmer wants to do the commercial, he can throw his name in the hat and people will, throw money at him until he does it. So you're competing with all that, and it's hard. And so one of the things that I you will see people get online and they will berate people for working for free. I would also, like Todd, encourage you to not to get paid something. If you have worked for free in the past, you're not a bad person. There's, I think that was probably a mistake because I think you could have made something, and I think that's an important part of your career. Is that first experience of getting paid to make something creative is really a formative experience. But know that I understand that you are competing against people, and sometimes the only thing you have to compete with is your rates. Set them as high as you possibly can to still be successful. That is sort of my advice to you. Now, how do you find that? That's a different discussion, but at least try. 9 times out of 10, if you quote a rate that's too high for someone, they will come back to you and say, I'm sorry, our budget really doesn't have that kind of flexibility in it, at which time you can talk to them about it. And that allows you to sort of find a rate. Almost no one is going to just blow you off 100% and call you names for asking for too much money. They are going to be reasonable. They're going to say, hey, can we get this down? And if they do, I probably don't want to work with them. Just saying. If they're not willing to at least discuss it, you're going to run into other problems too.
I find like if they love your work and they love you, they'll make it work. They'll try to pay you what you're worth because that means they respect you. And you want to work with people that respect you, that love your music and love what you do. Not what Hans Zimmer does, not what John Williams does, what you do. And that's the kind of work you want to do because that's what's going to make you feel happy and complete, fulfilled. Of course, there's going to be that time you're going to have to work for free when you're just starting out. But even if you go to the director or whoever and just say, hey, can you give me $5? $10.
Can you let me sell this later?
Yeah, or
that's
sell.
a really
there you
great
go.
one. Can I throw this up on Bandcamp and make money off of it? If someone is saying, I'm not going to pay you any money to create this score for this film, and also you can't sell it, walk away. Yeah. Because that is ridiculous.
Always retain the rights to your music. Always.
As much as you can retain the rights to your music, yes.
Always. That's very important. I think that's a lot of new composers or songwriters or whatever fall victim to. They just hand over, oh yeah, you can have it because they're so desperate to work. you gotta think towards the future. You always gotta be.
You're signing off copyright. They should be paying you a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Up front, not later, not back end. Up front.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Always try to get paid. Understand, some people just like, there's a project they want to be a part of that they're willing to work for free. If you can do that, do it. Don't feel bad about it. But, at the end of the day, there's so many other ways to, be respected. And like I said, if they love your work, they'll be willing to make it work. If you're asking for $50 an hour and they say, man, we just don't have it in the budget, but can you do 35? Hey, they're trying to make it work. And then if you can always counter that and say, well, how about 40? Maybe they'll say, okay, we can do that. And if they say, you know what, we can't, we can only do 35, but we love your work, at least they're willing to work with you. But if they say, hey, no, we can't pay you, just walk away. They don't respect you as an artist. That's a deal breaker. Go ahead.
Just to share a little insight as a relatively newer composer. I would say this year is really the first year I've started charging for my work and what I do. Because in the past, it was always like, I'm just trying to get experience and all that, and that's perfectly fine. Like,
yes.
I would even say that's something you should do in the beginning, just to get your feet in the water and see how real life experience is really like. And even to this day, months into it, a year into it, I'm still hesitant at times on deciding how much I really should charge. But like Todd and Curtis said, if they're willing to actually work with you, and if you give them kind of a ballpark rate, something you think you're worth, and they're willing to work with it, then you should definitely go for it. And every single time I quote someone something, I'm always in the back of my mind a little bit worried about what they'll say, because everyone hates rejection, right? But 9 times out of 10, they'll say, that's a great rate, and I can't wait to get started. And from there, the more you do, then you can start even raising your rates after that. So
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I'm terrified every time someone asks me for a quote. I am terrified. I do not like to deal with finance and money. It is very hard. I find it very awkward. I don't like to talk about it. And that's really hard for me, and I have that same terror, and and because of this, I'm going to be honest, I tend to undercharge. I should charge more than I do, and for a lot of stuff. But what my sort of, how do I know that it's too low? Is I say, would I be uncomfortable and feel bad about how low this is? Mm-hmm. And if I don't, if I'm fine with it, I feel like that's a fair rate. You are the one who decides that. No one else decides that. And I recently had a client who said, how much for this? I gave him a quote, and he said, I feel like that's kind of a little too low. Can I pay you more? I mean, that will happen.
That's awesome.
And
that's
what
great.
I said to that guy? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let's go with that higher rate. I'm not going to turn down your money, your free money, right?
But that guy valued your work.
But
he's
he
willing
valued,
to pay
right?
for it. Yeah, he valued what you do.
He was showing value, and that's also a really nice experience.
That's who you want to work with. People like that.
This is sort of to go into a more technical side. Todd was mentioning sort of a per hour rate. Is that typically how you do your rates, Todd? Like a per hour, how often you're working on it?
Yeah, right now, since I'm freelancing non-musically right now, I have a day job and stuff like that, and I'm a freelancer. So right now, most projects, it just depends. I come across, they pay per hour, but I'm finding a lot of projects pay per project. And the way to do, I think the best way I'm seeing is by project is the best, because that's where you can get the most value and profit. So let's say they're going to charge $1,000. Okay. Well, I usually charge $40 an hour. So I have to find out, how many hours would $40 an hour make? And what I want to do is undercut that, so I make a profit. So if it takes me 10 hours, they want me to do the job in 10 hours, well, I'm going to try to do the job in 8 hours. So there you go. I just got 2 hours. So I just made $80 in my pocket. So yeah, I think per project might be the best, but also, depending on the work you're doing, by hour might suit you. And I think the best way to come up with the rates that work for you, because everybody's going to be different, you got to look at, if you're just getting started, you might not have as many expenses like me or Curtis. We own houses, we have kids, family, stuff like that. So our rates might different from so you're going to have to look at, your budget, how much money you need to survive, per month, if this is what you're doing full time. and come up with a number that you're comfortable with. And, maybe do some research and find out what other composers are charging and try to hit that ballpark. Because I've found myself, they every time I'm interviewing for a freelancing job, they always ask, what's your rate? And when I usually say 40 an hour, they're like, oh, that's in the ballpark. So it seemed to work for me. I probably can charge a little bit more since I've been doing this now for 8 years, my day job freelancing. But I just feel comfortable with that number because I've never had as much pushback. If you start getting a lot of pushback with a number that you throw out, maybe you are asking for a little too much. That's just something that you're going to have to feel out. We can't tell you. But like I said, look at your expenses and look how much you need to survive. And don't just cut it slim like, oh, I'm going to eat ramen noodles for a week. No, make sure you're, really budgeting because, like we said, make sure someone's willing to pay for what you think you're worth. And like Curtis said, he found a client that was willing to give him more money. And there are people out there that are willing to pay,
absolutely
your worth or more.
Absolutely. And so going back to sort of like how rates work, another model I would suggest new people look into. I mean, I charge on a per minute basis. If you want 1 minute of music, it's going to cost X number of dollars. If you want 2 minutes, and I usually just kind of round to the nearest minute. So I would encourage new composers to look into that model. That's sort of standard in the industry. You can go on Google and look up just Google rate schedules or 2018 film music rates or whatever rates, and you will find PDFs that are published by different organizations. Oftentimes your PRO will help you out with there. Sometimes they have will help you out with there. Will help you out with that. They often have documents on their website that are the current rate schedule. So you can kind of get a ballpark, like what is a typical per minute rate? And you would be surprised how high they get. It's pretty, even for modest projects, even for like a mid-indie game, a typical per minute can be between 300 to 500 minutes or $500 per minute of music that you produce, especially if you're handing over copyright. That's use those tools. You can Google these; they do exist. And again, the thing I like about per minute is that the game developer, the director, whoever sort of comes at you and says, we need 10 extra minutes, that's going to cost them 10 extra per minute dollars, right? So that's a good place to be in because then you're not being asked to, go through. I always, another thing I always remind people, always include how many revisions you will do and then put a charge on, once we're past 5, 6, 10, whatever you want revisions, it's going to cost you X number of dollars per revision. That's hard to do because we're in a creative field. What if they don't like it? Give them 5 shots or 10 shots or whatever you feel comfortable with. I mean, I'll be honest, I personally usually do 5. There are 5 revisions and then there's a rate of, revisions past 5 are X number of dollars.
Yeah, if I can jump in here, I personally only do 3 because what I like to do is when I'm discussing the project with the person, I'll actually ask for as many details as possible up front, just so I know, what the kind of sound they're going for. And if in the first couple of revisions you can't really get it to work out, then maybe it's not really worth the extra time to do it. And you can usually tell in a little bit if they're trying to just get extra out of you for nothing. If they're trying to take advantage of you, then you can kind of tell. Then at that point you can just
and this goes back to like permanent rates too. You don't need to be worried if they ask for 3 revisions and you've essentially taken a 2-minute song and revised it 3 times. They now have quote unquote 6 minutes of music, right? Well, what if they use it? Well, then you bill them for 6 minutes. You bill them for what they use. So that's kind of how I've always seen it work. You do get package deals where someone will say, okay, I'll pay you a lump sum for this full thing up to always make sure you have up to this big right in there. But that's also a thing you can do. That's popular on film a lot of the time. They haven't. The director maybe hasn't spotted the film, so they don't quite know exactly how much they want, but they know it's going to be within, X number of minutes to Y number of minutes. Then package deals are good for that. So
I got something very important here to say, especially for new people starting out. You got to remember this is a business. At the end of the day, you are running a business. You are a business. So you got to treat it like a business. I know it's art. We're creative people. Most creative people are horrible at business, marketing. Like Curtis says, he has problems with that. I do. Yeah, Chris does too. But, if you treat it like a business and treat your music as a product, I think you'll have a lot of success. It's something we're all learning. We all struggle, but I think experience is what's going to pay off here. Because I know Curtis is a little more seasoned than me and Chris. I'm probably the least experienced, but like I said, I do run a freelance business outside of this. That's not music, but I use those principles towards music. And that's what I find that works. And so just treat it as a business, maybe study up on some business. Definitely, we're going to talk about some licensing contracts where it really counts. And Curtis has kind of alluded to a little bit on contracting and put that stuff in your contracts, which is very important. Make sure you retain the rights of your music, stuff like that. So that's just a little thing I wanted to throw in there. You have to treat this like a business. You have to have the business mindset. I understand we're creative. You're creating music and, oh man, I don't need to know business. My music will speak for itself. People are going to pay for my music. No, they won't. They will take advantage of you if you let them. And so you have to know your stuff and, make sure you're prepared for this stuff. And I think everything that Chris and Curtis said, put a revision clause in there because they will milk you. They will. And if they know that you're new, and you're just getting started, they'll take advantage of that. And you don't want that because then at the end of the day, it's a loss for you and it's misery that you have to go through. And no one should have to do that.
And it's really hard because at the same time, you're trying to please the client,
Right.
So there's also you kind of have like tinted glasses, if you can say it that way.
Yeah, rose tinted glasses.
Yeah. So
well, what you should do is, if it's not working, let's say you're on revision 5, maybe just pull the client aside and say, look, what's going on here? Let's just stop for a second. What's not working here? Because sometimes they get married to a temp track and I said the word temp track. All composers hates temp track. I don't. I tend not to. I like them because it gives me a sense of, this is what they want. Okay, I'm going to do that, but make it my own. But what you really want to do, like I said, is you want to be hired for what you do. But right now, most indies and most filmmakers, they'll hear a tune and they just slap it on their video project or, their film and just do that. And you're going to get that a lot. I think if you embrace it, but try to make it your own, but still please the client, I think you're going to find success. And then once you find your sound or what you do, people will hire for what you do. Just like people hire John Williams for John Williams, people hire Hans Zimmer, Alan Silvestri, Tyler Bates, etc., etc. They all have something that they do well. Find what you do well and run with it. People will pay if they love it.
So in terms of licensing, it's a very complicated topic. It's negotiated very sort of with very fine-grained options for every different project that you work on sometimes. But the basic thing you need to know about licensing is that there are basically two kinds of licenses that exist. There's a like a royalty-free license, and then there is the whole genre of sync licenses and all these other ones that allow you to license music in a different way. And the big difference is, do you get back end? So if you look at online, there's like a ton of places that will label themselves royalty free. You've got Music Bed, which only accepts super elite people and still won't let me in / angry. Audio Jungle, Pond 5, there's a million and billion of these. Most of them work on what's called a royalty-free model, where the license is an upfront thing to use your music once. Someone has a commercial that they want to use it in. They have a presentation, a marketing video. They have a website, something where they're only using your music once, and so they pay one, usually pretty small, upfront fee for that. But they only get to use it the one time. If they want to use it on a different project or whatever, they have to come back and buy another one. So that's sort of general royalty-free stuff. It's not quite that simple, and we can go into those, and we'll talk about that in a second. But that's the basic one. All the other licenses that you'll be working with people usually involve some sort of back end, meaning that you've written the music, they've paid you some upfront fee for it, and then they take the music, they put it in a product, and they sell that product. That could be a movie, a film, whatever, a game. And as part of your license, you receive a cut of that. And sometimes that comes through the PRO, like we talked about earlier. Sometimes that's just direct to you. I've done work with a lot of game devs where, it's, the contract license that I worked out for them says, X% of net revenue comes back to me on your game for say a year or 2 years. Usually it's not indefinitely. If you ever get one that is indefinitely, jump on that right away. Just indefinitely is always good because it never ends.
Nice.
But those are basically your two ones. Like, is it just front end, or is it just back end, or is it front end and back end? As I said, this is a very complicated topic. If that's something people are interested in, sort of talking about the differences and sort of things that people put into these to make them complicated, leave us some feedback. You can go to the Composing Made Simple Discord and let us know. You can probably just go on Todd's YouTube channel and spam him. You can say whatever you want to do. Let us know. I can certainly go into some things. Todd always talks about how Curtis is more seasoned than me. I'm still a pretty small fry in the composing world, so I have not seen even a hint of how complicated these can get. Between composers, publishers, game developers, all this different stuff, it gets very complicated. But I can certainly go into a little bit more detail about some of these different options. So if that's something that interests you, let us know. We'll get on it.
Great, thanks, Curtis.
Yay. Awesome. Okay, so for this next segment, we really wanted to discuss some of the tools that beginner composers can really start getting into. And there's always the question of, what should I get first, and what's the best bang for my buck? If I'm just starting out, what are the best libraries that will give me access to the best sounds at the best price? And, that'll help me get the results really quickly. So we have a list of them here that we think would be a great starting point for you. So why don't we just start with the first one, and that is the very well-renowned Albion from Spitfire. And they actually have, I believe, 5 of these. And, these are known to help you get that cinematic orchestral sound right out of the box. These were recorded in their Air Lyndhurst Hall in the UK, and it's considered a pretty wet series by regular standards. And if you're looking for something that sounds awesome right out of the box without too much tweaking, this can get you there really quickly.
Albion 1 is an ensemble library, so if you're not really good with orchestration yet, and you just want to get something out there and start making music, I think this is the best. But just keep in mind they're not ensembles, so you don't get individual instruments. So if you're playing the horns patch, or not horns, brass patch, I think they do it high brass, low brass. When you play a high brass, it might be trumpets and horn, but if you just want a horn line, there's no way to really go in there and do that. But like I said, if you're just getting started and you want to, start making music, it's perfect for that. This was actually one of my first libraries that I bought. But I actually bought the original Albion one. They've rebranded it twice. Chris, what was your first library when you first started?
My first library was probably Cinebrass from Cinesamples, but the one all-in-one library I do have is Orchestra Tools Inspire, which I can talk about in a minute. But again, Spitfire is a great starting point. And like Todd said, this concept of ensemble patches and not being able to tweak very much is the whole point of the all-in-one library, because if you're not that seasoned of an orchestrator or an arranger, then these just give you a great sound out of the box without too much tweaking. So that's the whole point of it anyway.
Yeah, and it includes every section of the orchestra. Strings, I think they're all low strings, high strings, woodwinds high, woodwinds low, which is weird that they include woodwinds because woodwinds suck, right? Not, they're awesome. And then percussion and brass. And I think it comes with some synth patches too, right? What's it called?
Albion does.
Loops. Yeah. So it's a great package. Like I said, it was the first one I started with. And when I bought it over, I think 3 years ago, it was the first version of it. And they've really improved on it and added a lot more. Their percussions are really good. There's some really good percussion instruments in there, if you want that trailery epic sound stuff. Curtis, what about you? What was your first library? I think it was East-West.
Yeah, it's in East-West. It was probably Symphonic Orchestra. They're sort of their older all-in-one orchestral library that has all the sections. They don't do ensemble patches because reasons. So all of theirs are you will have a trumpet or a horn or whatever. You just have one of each, one, an articulation for each one. So it was like Albion, quite wet, considering especially their drier stuff that's come out later. So you do kind of, that's something personally I fight a little bit because, I want to add reverb later so that I can mix everything like it's in the same place. But those definitely do have a lot more room in them. So that's something to know. But I mean, they still do sell it. It's pretty cheap. I personally would recommend it as a good starter if that's what you're looking for. But do know you won't get that help with the sort of combined patches of multiple instruments in the same range.
Cool. So Chris, do you want to talk about the Inspire?
Sure. Yeah. So the next library is Berlin Orchestra Inspire, and that's basically a compilation of their renowned Berlin series, which I would say is up there with Spitfire and in terms of sound quality. And the reason I like that one the most is personally because of the sound. I find that the reverb is not too much or too little. So I find that I have to do very little mixing or reverb placement if I want to get it to sound really good. And a lot of sketching libraries, you'll use it just for an idea, and usually you'll replace it with something else. But I find that with Inspire, I can actually leave in that patch because it already sounds so good out of the box. The downsides again are that they are combined into ensembles, and so I think Orchestral Tools actually did that specifically for this product. Like they combined the legato for violins 1 and 2, and if you get their Berlin strings, they actually have 3 legato types depending on how quickly you play. For Inspire, there's only 1 legato type, and they basically really streamlined everything. And so not only does that make it easier and simpler, but also it decreases how much CPU power you have to use. I think the whole library is actually about 8 gigabytes in total, whereas their whole Berlin series probably adds up to somewhere around 500, 600 gigabytes. So
right.
you're getting a lot for a very good price. I think it's around like $400 or something for their orchestra. So
yeah, I wanted to touch on something, Chris, that you said, the sketching.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these libraries, like once you get, more under your belt, you buy some libraries, you learn some orchestration, these are good go-to sketching libraries to sketch your piece out real quick. And like Chris said, you can put the real instruments in. But I would tend to stay away from that. I would start on piano if you could, and if you're really good, start on paper. Right. But yeah. So I mean, don't get attached to the sound of the library because to get creative especially with orchestral music, you need to use your music brain, or use piano. Because piano is kind of a flat sounding instrument. And that's just going to develop over time, learning how an instrument sounds and how they articulate and stuff like that. But yeah, they're definitely good for sketching. Well, Cinesamples offers like a similar library to Albion One and Inspire, but I wouldn't say it's more that trailery cinematic sound. I think it's more traditional, Cinesymphony. It's called Cinesymphony Lite. And if you know anything about Cinesamples, which me, Chris, use Cinesamples and we love. I love Cinesamples. I think they produce great products. And it's basically this similar concept. I think their version only is like 1 or 2 gigabytes fully loaded.
I think fully loaded, it's like, I think it's 6 actually.
Is it 6? Okay.
Something like that, yeah.
It's very low. So I mean, like if you have a really, if you're working on a laptop, MacBook Pro, or just a laptop with, 16 gigabytes of RAM, maybe 8, this might be where you want to go to start off with, so you don't have to go buy a new computer and all that stuff. And this sounds great. It's definitely taking most of their stuff that they recorded. I think it's separate. It's not like they took patches from Cinestrings or Cinewinds or stuff like that. I think they actually created this library. I mean, it's just I think so.
I think actually they,
or did they?
Because I'm looking on the website right now, and they actually didn't mention any fresh recordings. I think they consolidated a bunch, but like Todd said, it's very lightweight. They have 6 patches in total, so they have strings ensemble Arco, so you have all your shorts and some longs there, and then they also have a strings ensemble for pizzicato, and then they have brass ensemble, woodwind ensemble, percussion, and timpani. So there's your 6 patches.
It's a basic. I mean, I know what they said. This is for students and professional composers to sketch with. That was their aim with this library. But definitely, if you're getting started, it's something to get there. And I think it sounds great. Like I said, it's not going to be your be-all, end-all, but if you're under a tight budget, definitely look at it.
And sorry, my mistake. You were right, Todd. It's only like 3 gigabytes, so
yeah, that's what I thought.
Very lightweight.
Yeah, it's very lightweight. All ensemble patches, and that's what it's for. It's basically, I remember Michael Patty saying that this is intended for students and professional composers to use to sketch with. It's not you can. I heard he has an actual video that he did, like a 30-minute video that he mocked up using it, and it sounds pretty good what he did. I think he used pretty much just that library. I think he used a few bells and whistles, but it sounds pretty good for what it is. Which brings me to it, I think the best choice on our list, and obviously one that I've used when I first got started, was East West Composer Cloud. Now, this is a subscription model, which is kind of different from what we talked about. The other libraries you buy and you own. Well, East West they offer all their libraries, I think all their gold libraries for the most part, for $30 a month. I think for students it's like $15 or $20 a month. There's a discount, and you get access to all their libraries that they offer. I think the gold editions, which is still fine. That's just, I think you're missing a couple mic positions. But just getting started, you don't need all that other stuff to worry about. And they sound great out of the box, and it's all their libraries. It's not like, oh, it's these separate libraries for Composer Cloud. No, it's everything that they have. So this kind of gives you a taste of what kind of libraries you like. And I think for me personally, if you're just getting started, this is the best option, because you don't want to blow, thousands of dollars on sample libraries, and then you find out 6 months later, this isn't really working for me. This might be, a couple months, and you're like, okay, this isn't for me. You've only spent, maybe $60, $100 at most. And like I said, this will definitely find your taste with sample libraries, what you like and what you don't like. And I think East West stands up to most of the libraries we've talked about. I know they get a bad rap, mostly because of their Play engine a few years back when they first launched it. Let's just say there was some problems, and they've gotten better. And I actually have East West Hollywood Orchestra Diamond, which Curtis does as well, and I hardly ever have any problems. There's a few problems here and there, but it's a lot better than it was years ago. So that would be my main pick.
This is an interesting library, just in the sense, or this is an interesting service in the sense that it really scales up. I mean, you can start, it's $30 a month, which is not $0, right? That's, I don't want to make light of it, but, compared to what samples can often cost, that's an amazing price. And so you can start off with this access to these libraries at the beginning of your career, and it scales all the way up to if you're a super high-end professional composer, because they have different tiers. You can eventually subscribe to Composer Cloud Plus, which allows you access to all the Diamond and Platinum libraries, which have all the mic positions. And the nice thing about it is that when they release a new library, you don't have to worry about, okay, I'm going to have to drop $700 on, Voices of the Empire. No, it's just there. You just download it and go. So as a professional composer, I find it very, very useful to pay for that. Now, the Diamond one is going to run you a lot more amount of money, of course, because it's not aimed at the entry level. But it's nice to have that sort of consistency from all the way down to I'm just starting out, all the way up to I'm now doing this for a living and have all this crazy equipment, and it's still relevant to you. So that's, I think, if anything, that is the main strength of the library, is that it sticks with you from the beginning all the way up to sort of the end game, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. If you're on a project, and you don't own a library, East West and the Composer Cloud might have it like, hey, I need that library over there to use for this project, and there you go. You don't have to fork over $800 for one little library for one simple little project, because you need this one little patch for the project. So I think it's the best deal. One thing to note is once you stop subscribing to the service, the libraries go away, but any music that you've created with it, you get to keep your music, obviously.
As long as you've bounced it.
Yeah, make sure you bounce it to audio. That's the only thing I'd say, because if you open up an old project and you didn't, good luck. you don't have the plugin. So yeah,
just pay $30, get another month, bounce it, and be done.
Yeah, there you go. So so I like I said, I think everybody agrees that this is probably the best if you're just getting started to definitely look at the Composer Cloud, because it's your best bang for your money.
Great. And we've got one more on the list here, and that is a Symphobia series from Project Sam. I don't think any of us here have really used it, but in terms of what it's all about, I think they're all about cinematic sampling, as they call it. So the patches included in this library are not just the sections with their natural articulations and all that. They actually include a ton of effects, lots of cluster stuff, rips, glissandi. I'm just looking here, orchestral hits, risers, a whole bunch of stuff. And then if you don't want all of that, because they actually have 3 Symphobias, you can just get their Orchestral Essentials 1 and 2, which is basically a streamlined version of Symphobia. So that has a little more of what you would need as a starter package. And the sound quality is on the higher end. It's very good, but to me personally, I think it's falls just short of Spitfire and OT and East West.
Yeah, and if you've watched TV shows, a lot of reality shows or horror stuff, you've heard Symphobia. It's on everything. It's been used so many. It's an older library, but the thing about Project Sam, and I'm going to give them credit, is they've been updating it over the years. I think sometimes they update it with no cost, right? I think it's a free upgrade sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. When sample library companies do that, they have an older library and they update it, put new patches, and they don't charge you. That's a great company. And but yeah, you've definitely heard Symphobia on any TV show. It's been overly used, but like Chris said, it's a workhorse. It's a great library. It's definitely on my list to get. I just never got around to getting it because I've always heard good things about it. So thanks for joining us for our second episode of Composing Made Simple. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We covered a lot of topics, especially for advice for new composers starting out. You know, how to find clients, how to share your music correctly, how to build relationships, what to charge. Definitely good stuff there. If you have any questions or if there's something that you want us to expand upon, please reach out to us. Go head on over to our Composing Made Simple website, the Discord channel. My website's toddcabers.com, curtisschweitzer.com, I believe, and Christopher CU, right?
Yes, Christopher CU. Yes, that's right.
I remembered, Chris. Again, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your support and look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.